everybody, this is Trap. Today I'm going to go over my Archlinux installation inside of a Windows Subsystem for Linux 2 distribution running on Microsoft Windows 11. I also use this configuration on Microsoft Windows 10 when I'm required to use that operating system. So you can see that I'm running Archlinux on Windows 10, 8664, and you can see this machine has been up for a little over an hour. Got a pretty decent processor, get pretty good speed on my computer when I'm doing certain activities. So we're just going to hop right into Neovim. And for those of you that have seen my blazingly fast video, you know that I can time my startup. So I'm 96 plugins, I've got 25 of them loaded, not too bad. And you can see that I've got a 21.66 plugin startup time. Not bad, given I'm running inside of a virtualized environment. If I get out of this and go straight to my wiki, before I do that, you're going to notice occasionally some things like the screen doesn't refresh correctly. That is a Windows 10 interaction with Neovim and Windows Terminal. Is the best I've been able to zero this in right now. But one of the ways I solve that problem is I refresh the screen by navigating to another page. In this particular context, I'm going to just bring up my wiki page. So here's my wiki that I'm going to use. You notice that it didn't clear the bottom, so it only cleared those things it needs to clear. But if I can use Windows navigation keys to move that window around. So this is one of the reasons that I stick with a Windows program, because I can use the Windows built-in on that operating system's desktop. So this got me in here pretty quickly. You're noticing I'm using a terminal, Arima RDP for the connection. Does a really good job when I need to connect my Archlinux machine to a Windows machine or to another Linux machine. I'm using Windows Terminal. The version that I'm using is 1.5.3460. Pretty recent. I've updated this machine within the last week. You can quickly create PowerShell or DOS command prompts so you can have a seamless environment between the two. They work pretty well, but that's outside the scope of this video. I did just want to show you that is the text, part of the tech stack I'm using. Obviously, I'm using Neovim, and I'm also going to be using VimWiki, and I'm going to use LaTeX. You've already seen the screen problem I'm having with the screen refreshing. I also have to use the control left square bracket to do the escape key. Normally, I've got that key, my escape key and the CAPSLOCK key swapped at the operating system. I do have a program that swaps it on Windows 11, but it doesn't work when I have the combination of the key swap and the remote desktop in. So I have to do different muscle memory. So you might see some awkward keystrokes as I'm typing. I'll try to minimize keystroke error. So without anything further, let's go into some of the tech that I'm using. I'm using Neovim, as I said, and I'm using a wiki which allows me to navigate between tabs. Nothing fancy there, normal stuff. But in this context, because of VimWiki, if I click on a link, it actually opens up the page associated with that URL. So not only does it open up local pages, it opens up web pages as well. So we're going to close everything but close all other tabs, but 10 posts. GitHub page. So the reason I throw Tim's post name up there is I first started learning Vim. I started using a lot of Tim's plugins, Fugitive, Pathogen, things like that. A great plugin writer, and a lot of the plugins that he wrote allowed me to learn Vim pretty quickly. Next up would be Jun Jung. He wrote Plug. He also wrote a plugin that I'm going to demonstrate really quick that I use quite a bit. So if I take this file and I just tell it to type it correctly, get rid of all spaces and space that down to nothing. Now that's file, I can do that. It's a little hard to read, but I want it aligned again. So I'm just going to select the whole buffer, and then I'm going to do a keystroke that's going to align that up for me. GAIP star bang, boom. So now that buffer is completely lined up. If I navigate back and navigate back in, you see that alignment has stayed. That's a plugin that Junjun wrote, and when I saw that plugin in action, I literally stopped what I was doing and thought about my career to think of how many hours and nights that I waste just doing simple things like text alignment. And it was that one keystroke, one set of keystrokes that caused me to get in, to give 100% commitment to mastering Vim as best I could. Along the way, of course, you're going to run into Stephen Losh, who wrote a great book, Learning Vim Script the Hard Way. Learned a lot with his content, and Luke Smith had a lot of videos on how to be efficient with Vim, how to do things with macros, and so I watched a lot of his videos, learned a lot along the way. And then a couple years back, when we started using things like Neovim, I tried, probably like a lot of you did, I tried to have a single vimrc file and have it work for both Neovim and Vim, and it works, but for me it was clunky. I had some problems with it, so I abandoned that approach and I went all in on Neovim configuration in Lua. So in this section here where we talk about moving to Neovim influencers, they're listed alphabetically because these are guys that I've watched for the last couple of years. Christian's done a really good job with the community that he has with LunarVim and a lot of plugins, a lot of videos that he's put together. And in fact, it was a couple months back on one of Christian's live streams that he mentioned, just get started. One question one of the followers asked, and he said, I just encourage people to make content. It doesn't matter if anybody likes it. It's just you're contributing. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is just contribute back. If I look at Eric and go down the list with Eric has done a wonderful job with Archlinux, the whole Archlinux University, a lot of content, does over 3,000 videos that Eric has done. Great work, really good about responding to almost everybody that posts a question to him. So he's been helpful, influenced me quite a bit. Of course, everybody probably has heard of the Archlinux. You don't go too far without seeing his videos and the Vim speed tests and things like that he does. Great personality, a lot of really, really good content, very transparent, a lot of good work he's done. TJ, going down the same list, you can't, a lot of the contributions of things that have happened with LSP, telescope and things like that, TJ was involved with it. Again, great content that he's done as well. And then Folk has done a lot of really, really cool Neovim plugins. So when I look at these plugins, I don't just look at I use them, I actually look at the code too. So I look at the code they're writing, try to learn from it. So it's been really cool to learn those things. Which that takes me down to the meat of this talk, is the one I talk about VimTex, and give another shout out to Carl. If you're a LaTeX user and you're in school or professionally, or you're doing doctoral work or whatever, I really encourage you to use Carl's VimTex plugin. It works in Neovim, it works in Vim, does a really, really good job at helping you get your Vim environment set up where you can actually be super, super productive. You're seeing me use Carl's wiki right now, and you will notice in just a moment here that I'm going to be in a wiki page. It's my file type, so I call my MD files, I call them wikis. But you're going to see me jump from a wiki page directly into a LaTeX document. So back when I first started learning Vim, and I was doing a project that required me to use a lot of LaTeX, I was supporting scientists and mathematicians and things like that. These guys were really brilliant people, and all the work that they did was all based on LaTeX. So I dove in and started learning LaTeX, and one of the first things I noticed was that there was a lot of redundancy in the documents that they were writing, things that had to do with what the document layout looked like. So content and layout are two separate notions. So I think in terms of layout as a design activity, design the layout of the document, and then I want to come up with a layout style that works, and I want to reuse that style over and over again. So you're going to see me demonstrate how I went about solving that problem, and then in other posts I'll go into it a little more deeper. So if I go into my Vim document at this point, I just have a simple LaTeX document. For those of you that have seen my other posts, you notice my Vim folds right away. So I've got this thing folded up really quick so I can look at the document. If I turn off line numbers, relative record line numbers, it's a 561 line document. So I can jump around the document with any navigation I want. So if I want to go down to the document footer abstract section, open that up, I can navigate to it right there, and then I can generate the document. So there's the document generated. Now wait a second. Think about what I just did deeply. I am in Archlinux running inside of Windows Subsystem for Linux 2. I just launched a Windows program. So if we look at the Windows taskbar, I just launched a program in Windows. How do I know that's a Windows program? I have full navigation control of that window using the standard built-in Windows desktop keystrokes that you can use. Okay, so I can bring that document up, I can put it anywhere on the page I want, I can do full screen with it, I can do whatever I want with it. It's just a Windows document. So let's make a little change to this document. We'll go down to the installation section. There's nothing special about the installation section, but we'll open that up, and we're going to say something like bar is to foo as foo is to bar. Completely nonsensical sentence that I write quite a bit when I need content for a screen really quickly. So you'll notice a couple things before I do anything else. You notice the screen is completely screwed up right now, okay? That is the interaction between Neovim completion and plugins and the Microsoft Windows terminal. This is not a bug in Neovim. It's likely the way I have Microsoft Windows terminal configured. I have not figured out how to solve that problem yet. So my shortcut solution is to navigate, get off that keystroke and go back a page and then come right back. And most of the time it clears things up. And so I'm using right now to do that navigation, I'm using one of Tim Pope's plugins that allows me to do some navigation between buffers. So I'm doing open buffer, previous buffer, next buffer. And the keystrokes, you can see them at the top of the screen when I'm using. So if we go back to the installation section, we're going to see right here at the installation section, it says this section describes. So we've got that part of the document highlighted. Then we're going to go over here and we're simply going to save the file. We're going to write it. Now we notice that the document recompiled and it re-rendered, and I didn't have to do anything other than I saved the file. This is an extremely powerful environment for near real-time editing and previewing of your document. And the only plugin that I needed to make this work was VimTex. So VimTex does an excellent job wrapping up LaTeX Make. So if you're a LaTeX user, you know about LaTeX Make, it's wrapped that up for me very nicely. One of the things I will need to point out to you is that I am using a PDF viewer that makes this possible. I could choose to use Adobe. One of the problems with Adobe is it throws up a pop-up telling me your underlying file has changed. What do you want to do? That interferes with my workflow. I know that file is changing. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm getting ready to delete this text right now. I don't need to be told that. I just want it to happen. So I go over here and I whack, 2 lines are gone. By the way, the keystroke I just used came from Stephen J. Loss's stuff using the minus key to remapping the minus keys to DD. Okay, so that's an example of me using things that I've learned from other people to improve my workflow. At this point, I just save the file. And we're going to see the foo is to bar section has gone away. Also notice that what I had kind of stays and the text underneath it is being updated. Pretty cool for that visual aid when I'm looking at my content and trying to figure out where I was. So from a when I talked about if you're doing professional writing or you're doing your doctoral work or your grad work or whatever, think deeply about what you want your layout of your document to look like, so you can separate layout and think of layout as a design activity. I'm going to design the layout of my document. So if somebody were to come to me and say, "Hey, Trap, I love your document, and man, I really don't want that logo in the upper, left-hand corner. I want it in the lower right, and I want the page number. I want it at the top." My response is going to be, "Okay, that's a design problem. Well, let's go design what the header and the footer looks like." And because the way I've designed this template, I can do those kind of changes with this template super fast, and I can produce a variety of different kinds of documents because I'm using the same built-in. I'm using the tlc-article that I authored. I will go into other videos later that shows how to do that and advanced features that I've come up with auto documentation and the ability to design entire design history files, which is very specific to the medical device community. So if we go back to another document, I'm going to see my Beamer presentation. Now, for those of you that don't know what Beamer is a LaTeX presentation format for people that need to produce presentations, but they don't want to use Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay, I'm not making any good, bad, or ugly comments about Microsoft PowerPoint. I use it when I need to, but when I don't have to, I want to work with LaTeX. Why? Because everything in my workflow, whether it's documentation or source code, is all source code. In other words, I think in terms of my LaTeX documentation, I think of that as source code, meaning it's backed by a repository, which means I can do check-ins and checkouts and diffs, and it means I don't have to change my workflow regardless of the language I'm working with. So if I look at this particular document here, and I change 27 to 28, I'm going to make this nonsensical change, we're going to see that that's going to change right away. Okay, so that 28th, 27th just changed to 27. If we undo the change and save the document again, we're going to see that that's going to go back. Okay, so there again, you've got different kinds of packages that are being written, and I can generate my PDF document, and I've launched it from Windows side. I've launched the PDF viewer from Linux, and it's launched on the host guest operating system, which is the Windows 11 environment that I'm actually using. So if I go back to my start page and go back, I just use those navigation keys. I just navigated 3 documents, didn't really care where it came from. If I go back over here and I say, I just want to go back to my wiki again, go back to my main index page, I can bring this one back up. And let's say I want to go back over and check out, I probably didn't bring up Carl's Wiki. I need to bring that back up in my browser. Boom, there it is. Now, if for whatever reason when I'm working, because the way the Windows key bindings work, if I wanted to do tile that window differently, I'm trying to minimize my mouse movement, right? So if we look at the way that moves, I can now kind of get a tiling window manager. Sometimes I have to touch the mouse, but I'm really, really trying not to use the mouse when I'm doing these when I actually work. Because once I get the layout done, I could be in a situation where if I go into my article, I might be writing documentation. I want to look at the content or the output of the documentation. I want to look at that, but I also am needing to reference something on a website that has information in it for the content of what I'm writing. So that could be I'm writing documentation for code. It could be documentation I'm writing for unit tests, etc. So this becomes a very, very powerful environment for me to use when I have to work on Windows 10 and Windows 11. And oh, by the way, if we go back to the beginning and we look at the wiki index and we go back to lazy, you're going to see that I was at 21.66 milliseconds on a virtual machine. Not bad. And if I do the header, when I started this document, I only had 25 plugins loaded. Now I've got 57. So during this talk, I've been moving around using different technology, and my plugins continuously change, and none of it interferes with my workflow. The only obstacle to my workflow right now is simply the Windows terminal itself not cleaning itself up as much as I would like to see it. Hey, thank you again for watching. This is Trap. If you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and if you have comments, please give me some comments, because I'm trying to be a better content provider. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.